Welcome to DJ's True Crime, where we give you true crime, unsolved mysteries. So snuggle up, get cozy, settle in, let's get to the story. Boy vanished into the trees. This is the unsolved disappearance of Dennis Martin. On a warm June afternoon in 1969, 6-year-old boy stepped into the woods of America's most visited national park, and he was never seen again. No screams, no footprints leading out, no blood, no body. Just silence, broken only by the wind moving through the trees. This is not a story about a stranger with a van. This is a story about how someone can vanish in plain sight, surrounded by family, in the daylight, inside one of the most heavily traveled forests in the United States, and never come home. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park stretches across North Carolina and Tennessee. Over 500,000 acres of dense forest, steep ridges, ravines, and ancient growth trees. In June of 1969, the park was packed. School was out, and the weather was perfect. Families filled the campground. Among them were William and Violet Martin, visiting from Knoxville, Tennessee, with their 2 sons, Douglas, age 9, and Dennis, age 6. Dennis Martin was small for his age, about 45 pounds. Sandy hair and an easy smile. He was playful, energetic, and most of all, curious. Kind of child who loved hide and seek, never wandered far, at least not intentionally. They were camping near Spence Field, a high meadow area along the Appalachian Trail, accessible only by hiking. No, this wasn't reckless parenting. No, this wasn't isolation. You see, there were dozens of hikers nearby, families picnicking, children playing, and voices echoing through the trees. Dennis was safe, till he wasn't. On June 14th, 1969, the Martins met up with family friends, Keys, who were also camping nearby. The adults talked, kids played. At one point, Dennis suggested a game. He and another boy would hide behind trees and jump out to scare the adults. A harmless prank. Witnesses later said Dennis ran off laughing, disappearing behind a small rise in the terrain, no more than 30 to 40 yards away. Seconds passed, then a minute, and then 2. When Dennis did pop back out, his father called his name. There was no answer. They assumed he was hiding really well. Then the calls grew louder, more urgent. People began searching the immediate area behind the trees, bushes, logs, and within 5 minutes, the laughter had stopped. Within 10 minutes, panic had set in. Dennis Martin was gone. This wasn't a delayed response. Within minutes, Hikers were alerted. Within hours, park rangers were notified. And by nightfall, over 1,400 people were searching, including park rangers, volunteers, and the local law enforcement. Bloodhounds, they were brought in, and helicopters circled overhead. Dennis had vanished without leaving a trace. There were no footprints leading away, no torn clothing, and no signs of a fall. One ranger would later say it was that the woods had actually swallowed him whole. Bloodhounds picked up Dennis's scent. They followed it straight, direct. Then abruptly, it stopped. Not faded, not scattered. Stopped. It was as if Dennis had been lifted off the ground. And this detail would haunt investigators for decades. See, scent trails don't just end unless a person was carried or placed into a vehicle or entered water or something interfered dramatically with the terrain. But none of these explanations fit the location. There were no roads nearby. Water wasn't close enough. There were no drag marks, no struggle. During the initial search, a critical report came in. A man named Don Keys, part of the camping group, reported seeing something earlier that day. And this is what he described. He saw a rough-looking man carrying something over his shoulder, moving very quickly through the woods. He was wearing dark clothing and appeared to be very uncomfortable being seen. At the time, he's assumed the man was carrying a wild hog or a deer. But after Dennis disappeared, the description took on a terrifying new meaning. Could it have been a body he saw that man carrying? And here's where the case takes a darker turn. During the search, U.S. Army offered assistance. Specifically, Green Berets, elite soldiers trained in jungle, wilderness survival. They were deployed to help. They searched aggressively, almost too aggressive. Some civilian searchers later claimed certain areas were restricted. Searchers were redirected without explanation. The military presence, well, it felt controlling. Rumors spread quickly. Was the military hiding something? Had Dennis wandered into a classified training area? Had there been an accident that one wanted public? No evidence ever supported this. But the lack of transparency fueled decades of suspicion. Of course, the Army denied any wrongdoing. No records were ever released, and no explanation was ever given of why certain zones had been closed. On the second night, weather took a dramatic turn. Heavy rain swept through the mountain, and any remaining trace, footprints, scent, disturbing ground, all was washed away. Search dogs lost the trail completely. Dennis Martin was now officially a missing person, no physical evidence. After days turned into weeks, the operation took a scale back. And then it ended. In the woods, it fell silent again. Dennis did not come out. As in many missing child cases, investigators quietly examined the parents. They had no criminal history. There was no inconsistencies and no signs of abuse. The Martins, they cooperated fully. They passed polygraphs, and they never wavered. Dennis's father spent years hiking the same trails, retracing steps, searching ravines, calling his son's name into the trees. And he died without any answers. Some of the theories that won't die, maybe it was an animal attack. But there was no blood, no torn clothing, and no remains ever found. Experts say this is very unlikely. Number 2, an accidental fall. Searchers covered ravines and drop-offs. Nothing was found. Number 3, maybe it was an abduction. Remote location, but no vehicle access. Yet, the scent stopping suddenly suggests Dennis had been carried. Number 4 and final, maybe it was human error, or maybe it was cover-up. Military secrecy was an issue, and there was conflicting witness accounts. There was also restricted search zones where no one was allowed to search. Why this case still haunts investigators? Dennis Martin disappeared in daylight. He was surrounded by people. In one of the most searched parks in the world. And no evidence has ever surfaced. No remains, no clothing, and most of all, no confession. Not even a credible lead. This case, to this day, remains officially unsolved. Investigators believe Dennis likely stepped just beyond the ridge line, out of sight for seconds, not minutes. Something happened fast. Too fast to hear. Too fast to react. Whether it was an accident, an encounter, or something far more disturbing, Forrest kept it secret. And Dennis Martin never came home. Somewhere in the Smoky Mountains, the trees still stand exactly where they stood in 1969. And whatever happened that afternoon, they are the only witnesses that remain. The disappearance, Dior Kunz. Child vanishes, and everyone left becomes a suspect. On July the 10th, 2015, a 2-year-old boy vanished in the mountains of eastern Idaho. No witnesses, no confirmed sightings, no physical evidence, and no remains. Just a campsite, or adults whose stories never fully lined up. His name, Dior Kunz Jr. And from the very beginning, investigators would say something chilling. The people who should have protected him know more than they're telling us. Dior Kunz Jr. was born on May the 5th, 2013. Friends and family described him as energetic, curious, verbally delayed but expressive, attached to familiar adults. He was just 2 years old when he disappeared. He lived primarily with his parents, Jessica Kunz and Dior Kunz Sr. Their relationship was very unstable. Friends later described it like this: frequent arguments, financial stress, temporary separations. By the summer of 2015, tensions were really high. And then came the camping trip. July the 10th, 2015. The group consisted of Jessica Kunz, Dior Kunz Sr., Isaac Reinwand, his family friend, and Robert Walton, great-grandfather. They traveled to Timber Creek Campground near leador, Idaho. Remote, rugged terrain surrounded by thick forest, water, and wildlife. This was not a family-friendly campground. There were no playgrounds, no cell phone service, and no other campers was nearby. According to the parents, Deorr was alive, walking around the camp, playing near a creek, and he was last seen between 2 o'clock and 2:30 p.m. They claim Deorr Sr. and Robert went to look for a fishing spot. Jessica stayed at the camp. Deorr wandered out of sight for less than 10 minutes. When they realized he was gone, they started searching. By 4:30 p.m., authorities were called. But from the very first interview, investigators noticed something was wrong. Some of the red flags they noticed were inconsistent statements. Each adult gave a different version of where Deorr was last seen, who was watching him, and how long he was unattended. Timelines changed. Details shifted. Key moments were rewritten. The police noted that no two stories matched. Search and rescue volunteers said the parents appeared emotionally flat, asked very few questions, and showed little panic compared to typical missing child cases. This doesn't prove guilt, but still the same investigators flagged. Scent dogs were brought in, and they could not track Deorr away from the camp. Instead, scent abruptly stopped, suggesting that he never walked into the woods or he was carried away by someone, or he was never there at all. That last possibility terrified investigators. law enforcement statement, within days, police publicly announced the parents are suspects. Not persons of interest, suspects. Why? There was no evidence of a wandering toddler. In true wilderness disappearances, search teams usually find clothing, footprints, fabric, and remains. Here, there was nothing. Despite hundreds of searchers, helicopters, dogs, and drones, not one physical trace. Now, the behavior after the disappearance, they failed multiple lie detector tests. They're not admissible in court. They are very influential. They became very defensive in the interview, and they accused investigators of targeting them unfairly. Police countered with this: "We are following the evidence and the lack of it." Later, investigators revealed Deorr's grandparents were also under scrutiny. Conflicting accounts emerged about Deorr's health. Questions arose about custody tension. The investigation widened, but never moved away from the family. Now, there were some alternate theories, and this is why the police rejected them. Animal attack, there was no blood, no drag marks, and no clothing. Abduction by a stranger, there were no witnesses, no vehicles reported, and no history of predators in that area. Maybe it was accidental drowning. The creek was shallow, and it was searched extensively, and there were no remains downstream. Each theory collapsed under scrutiny, and only one possibility remained: that someone there knows what happened. So, where does the case stand today, 10, 11 years later? Dior Kunz has never been found. No arrests have ever been made. The case remains open, although cold, and the parents deny all wrongdoing. But law enforcement has never cleared them. One investigator summarized it simply: children don't disappear into thin air. People make them disappear. Somewhere between the trees of Timber Creek, between 4 adults and 1 missing child, between truth and silence, a 2-year-old boy vanished, and the people who loved him most remain under the longest shadow of suspicion. Now, since Dior Kunz went missing, his parents are not separated, they are divorced, claiming public scrutiny came between their marriage. I'll let y'all be decided that. National parks are sold as places of peace. Open skies, endless trails, a place where nothing bad is supposed to happen. Parks also erase people. Dense brush swallows footprints. Wildlife destroys evidence. Phone signals die. And when someone disappears inside a protected wilderness, investigators aren't just racing time, they're racing terrain. In May, a teenage girl would vanish near the edge of a national park. Within weeks, police would quietly stop calling it a search, start calling it a homicide. Her name was Phoebe Bishop. Phoebe Bishop was 17 years old, living in Gin, the rural community near Goodnight Scrub National Park in Queensland, Australia. She was young, restless, and planning her future, talking about travel, independence, and getting away from small town life. She lived in a shared house with two adults. James Wood, 34 years old, and Tanika Bromley, 33 years old. Friends would later say the living situation was very tense at times, but nothing, and I mean nothing, suggested what was coming. On May 15th, Phoebe prepared to leave town. She was supposed to travel. She packed and she said goodbye, but she never made it. On the morning of May 15th, Phoebe was seen on CCTV in Gin. This footage becomes crucial later. It is the last confirmed visual proof that she was alive. After that, there were no confirmed phone calls, no social media posts, and no arrival at her destination. Hours passed, then a full day. By the time her family realized something was seriously wrong, investigators were already uneasy. Phoebe hadn't vanished on a trail. She hadn't even checked into a park campsite. She disappeared from civilization right before the wilderness. Police began with a standard missing person response, but it didn't last long. Three things immediately troubled detectives. No digital footprint after May 15th. Conflicting accounts from people close to her. And the proximity of Goodnight Scrub National Park, a place where bodies can stay hidden for decades. Search teams expanded outward into the bushland, on the waterways, on dirt roads leading into the park, and abandoned clearings. The diver dogs were brought in. Helicopters flew grid patterns overhead. Then police quietly reclassified the case as suspicious. Behind the scenes, they were already watching the people that were closest to her. Investigators focused on the Gin house Phoebe shared with Wood and Bromley. And it was sealed as a possible crime scene. A vehicle, a gray Hyundai iX35, was seized. Forensics examined it. Interior fibers, traces of biological material, GPS and phone connectivity data. On June 4th, nearly 3 weeks after Phoebe vanished, James Wood was taken into police custody for questioning. He was released without charges. To the public, it looked like police had nothing. In reality, it meant just the opposite. Detectives were waiting for something far more definitive. On June the 5th, police made their move. Both James Wood and Tanika Bromley were arrested and charged with murder, 2 counts of interfering with a corpse. That second charge told investigators and the public something very, very chilling. Police believe Phoebe was killed shortly after she was last seen. Her body was moved more than once. The wilderness wasn't where she died. It was where she was hidden. Detectives allege the body had been transported into bushland near Goodnight Scrub National Park, then later relocated again in an attempt to further conceal it. This was no accident, and this was no getting lost. This was deliberate. The day after the arrest, police returned to the bush, not to search for a missing girl, but to recover evidence. On June the 6th, human remains were discovered in dense scrubland near the park. The area was remote, hard to access. Exactly where someone would go, they didn't want to be found. Forensic teams worked carefully, aware of the environment. They have destroyed critical evidence. On June the 17th, authorities confirmed what everyone feared. The remains was Phoebe Bishop. Wood and Bromley were remanded in custody. Court proceedings revealed hundreds of pieces of evidence, extensive phone data analysis, CCTV mapping of movements, witness interviews contradicting early statements. Prosecutors alleged coordinated actions after death, suggesting both suspects played roles in concealing what happened. A third individual was later arrested for interfering with the investigation, accused of using Phoebe's phone after her disappearance, further muddying the timeline. The case remains active, with hearings extending well into 2026. Goodnight Scrub National Park still stands. Tourists still hike its trails. Birds still move through the trees. But for investigators, the land will always hold the memory of a crime hidden by silence and distance. Phoebe Bishop didn't vanish because the wilderness swallowed her. She vanished because someone believed the wilderness would protect them. A misty morning blankets Yosemite National Park. Waterfalls roar. Sun, windsock, granite cliffs. And the scent of pine hangs heavy in the air. But beneath beauty, something sinister hides. On August 12, 2023, Rachel Sanders, a 28-year-old hiker and photographer, vanished along the mist trail. She left a backpack, a water bottle, and a cryptic note. Going for a quick hike, be back soon. By the time authorities began searching, hours had passed, and the trail, well, it swallowed her whole. The case has baffled experts, raised chilling questions, and exposed hidden dangers in America's most beloved national park. Rachel was from San Fran, adventurous and meticulous. Hiking wasn't just a hobby, it was her way of life. She had climbed Mount Shasta, explored the redwood forest, and posted Instagram photos documenting every journey. Friends describe her as careful, prepared, always leaving her location. Lovely. On this day, she wanted sunrise shots of Bernal Falls and Nevada Falls. She parked at the trailhead, signed in with the ranger station, and began the hike alone at 7:15 a.m. Here's a detailed timeline. Rachel crosses the footbridge near Happy Isles. Trail cameras capture her smiling, adjusting her camera gear. At 8:05 a.m., fellow hikers spot her at the base of Bernal Falls. She mentions her plan to summit to Nevada Falls. 8:45 a.m., a couple of hikers report seeing a man and woman arguing near the same trail that Rachel would take. They appear tense, looking around as if hiding from someone. At 9 a.m., park ranger notes a woman matching Rachel's description near the top of the missed trail. No signs of distress, backpack intact. 9:15 to 10 a.m., Rachel's GPS tracker records no further movement. Calls to her cell, no one answered. 11:45 a.m., her roommate calls the park. Rachel has not returned. Authorities begin search operations. That afternoon, canine units combed the missed trail and all the side trails. Drones scanned the cliffs and inaccessible areas. Volunteers joined the search. Evidence of torn fabric, minor blood, and scattered personal items are found. And that evening, search parties widen their range. Footprints lead off the main trail near a hidden ravine. Investigators theorize an encounter, voluntary or forced, may have occurred. Over 100 personnel, including rangers, canine units, and volunteers, joined the search. Drones and helicopters survey cliffs, ravines, and remote trails. Search parties discover unusual items, remnants of small campfires, unregistered tents, and footprints inconsistent with registered hikers. Investigators question whether Rachel stumbled upon something illicit, maybe poachers, maybe illegal campers, or just a plain violent individual. Suspects: Timothy Blake. It was part of the hiker couple that was spotted arguing. 32-year-old with prior assault and trespassing arrest, known to follow women hiking alone. Surveillance reveals maps of Yosemite's trails and discarded hiking gear at his residence. But no direct evidence linking him to Rachel yet. But detectives consider him a prime suspect. Park maintenance worker. He was seen in a restricted area. Timestamps conflicted with security footage. Questioned, but released due to lack of evidence. Illegal campers and poachers. The area has a history of unregistered camps, poaching activity. Rachel may have accidentally encountered. Forensics at campfire site suggest recent human activity, but no DNA was found. Accidental theories include maybe she fell from cliffs or slipped on granite slabs. Unlikely due to Rachel's experience and thorough searches of cliffs and ravines. Maybe it was a wild animal encounter. Yosemite has black bears and mountain lions. Minor blood evidence would suggest an attack, but no definitive animal predation signs were present. Witness 1. Hikers spotted a lone figure near the waterfall behaving erratically. Witness 2. Couple saw Blake and another woman acting very suspiciously. Ranger accounts detail hearing a scream around 9 a.m., though it could not be verified. These accounts deepen the mystery. Was Rachel abducted? Did she fall? Did someone in the park witness something that they won't admit? Thermal imaging and helicopters continue searches weeks after her disappearance. Volunteers take home side trails. Park implements new safety protocols, alerting hikers to report all unusual activity immediately. Well, here's another theory recap. Accidental fall, possible, but there was nobody found. Foul play. Timeline suggests interaction with another hiker. Evidence of struggle supports this. Intentional disappearance. Friends report she had future plans, making this very unlikely. An animal attack. Minor possibility and inconsistent with the evidence found so far. To this day, Rachel Sanders remains missing. Timothy Blake is a person of interest. No charges have been filed. Her family continues to hold hope. Authorities still patrol the missed trail, reminding visitors of the inherent dangers in the wilderness area. Her story serves as both cautionary tale and a mystery. Even in beautiful, well-trodden paths, danger can hide, and secrets of the forest may remain forever unrevealed.